The last lecture ended with the Suez Canal of Egypt and its impact. So I want to go back to the last part, so that this cut travel time from Europe to Asia by half, and that Egypt did have the nation state did benefit from um, it. There was 44% shares, but then 6 years later it was all sold to the British. Well, what does that mean? It means that the nation of Egypt was sold out by its leader, or that's how many would have saw it. And this is a very also interesting thing to bring up. Is like when we say like Egypt does this or that, or the U.S. does this or that. We're really talking about leadership, right? Whether an elected official or an unelected official setting up the nation in a way that may or may not benefit the majority. And so it's always kind of hard to tell, right? Like, do all the Egyptians then have to simply acquiesce and say, well, fair and square, our one dictatorial leader sold off, uh, um, shares to this, and so we rightfully don't have a right to benefit from this canal, or what? Right? I don't know. You see how this becomes like a big debate within, especially as revolutions brew and in dealing with nation states. Like when a corrupt regime borrows money from the U.S. or the IMF, and then the IMF or the loaner organization or state imposes reconstruction of that money on that given society, and now all of that society is obligated to pay back something from a leader that maybe even people didn't even elect, or an elected leader who did something outside of their powers of the republic or the democratic election. So it's always going to be a little bit complicated breaking that down. Anyways, so look at the benefits. So if you didn't follow any of that, or it's kind of hard to follow, let's go back to remembering Vasco da Gama. Remember leaving Portugal, going down this route along the coast of Africa, the west coast, and coming around and going, ta-da, Indian Ocean. That's how we get there. Because look, here's the Mediterranean. And then here's the Indian Ocean. And there's just one little thing here of land blocking access. The Suez Canal means like, hey, here we are. Boom! Now we're going right over here. Like, right? Here's India. Boom. Asia. Okay. So you can see why that was considered, and is still considered, a big deal, the Suez Canal. Okay. Now, while this was all developing, this is where we see the origins of Arab nationalism. Okay. So keep in mind the Ottoman Empire. You may not have thought about this. The Ottoman Empire was ruled by Turks, what is now modern Turkey, ruling over a majority of Arab populations. For some time, it's most likely that the majority Arab Muslim population would have simply saw themselves as being ruled by a Muslim ruler, fellow Muslim ruler. But nationalism teaches, right, that nationalities should have a right to their own nation states, not multi-ethnic empires. So with the coming of Napoleon and more observation of the West and all these various things, we're going to see the rising of Arab identity. And by the way, the British and the French are going to utilize and encourage and foster Arab nationalism to weaken the Ottoman Empire, right? To help also rebellion. And now, of course, Arab nationalism maybe in the modern world, Western nations don't find that as desirable to their interests. But in any case, Egypt inspired Arab nationalism. Remember, Egypt, an African country oriented towards the Arab Middle East. Okay, and we had Roman Catholic French in the middle of this, focusing on Lebanese Maronites who are also in communion with the Catholic Church. To this day, by the way, the political and economic power resides with Lebanese Maronite Christians. Okay, and it goes back to this time period. Some of them actually don't even see themselves as Arabs, but as Phoenicians, and that's a whole other complicated set of things. But in any case, the Tanzimat reforms also produced anti-Turkish actions. So Turks were also developing their own nationalism. So you can see how everything's breaking up, and there's going to be all this kind of chaos that's going to ensue. Right. We'll be getting back to that a little bit later, and we'll be seeing how that's going to affect things. The Maghreb. Okay? Al-Maghreb in Arabic means the West, by the way. Isn't it funny? We talk about the East first, the Middle East first, the West, or Western power. And there was actually an Arab Jewish woman who talked about the irony is that European Jews called Jews from Morocco and Algeria and Northern Africa Mizrahi. Mizrahi means like Eastern, but in fact they actually consider themselves Western, okay, because they're on the west side and this compared to the rest of the Middle East, right? You feeling me on this? Okay. This is collectively known as the Barbary States. I'm not really expecting you to have that all memorized or whatever, okay? Morocco was the only one that was fully independent in the early 1800s, and it was broken up into different autonomous provinces of the Ottoman Empire. By the way, little known fact that I might have mentioned in other lectures. The first country to acknowledge the independence of the United States, in other words, that United States is actually a country, was actually Morocco. What? An Islamic, African, Arabic-speaking country, first to acknowledge the independence of the United States. They had their own interests as well in doing that, but I thought that was a very interesting thing that you should know. And by the way, every president or leader that goes to Morocco always mentions that. Oh, by the way, we don't take for granted that, blah, 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 that you guys are the first to acknowledge us. But how many Americans know that? Anyhow. But it wasn't all considered good. And there was an issue of piracy. And there was profiting of piracy by those states. And America in 1801 refused to pay tribute. They were caught, if you look over here, in Tripoli. Okay, here was Morocco, right? Here's Algeria down here. An American ship was captured and refused to pay tribute, and war was declared on the U.S. The U.S. then stood up. Now, keep in mind, 1776 we declared independence. We're a very young nation at that time. And this is very far away from, obviously, the United States. And wins the war. This is the Tripolitan War. And so think about the Marine song here. I have right here. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Bam! Right here. Where does that song come from? We fight our country's battles in the air, on the land, and the sea. So the Marines still have in their song this memory. Right? Okay? Putting that all in the context. So British and U.S. navies bombarded Algeria and ended this tribute system. We're going to end this lecture right here.